Welcome, people, to episode 1 of the Highway to Healing podcast, where we are changing the narrative behind trauma and healing in our communities. My name is James. My co-host here is Jay Tobe. And this being episode 1, we have no guests. It's just us talking raw, like Jay likes to say. But how you doing, Jay?
Man, James, I'm doing good, brother. Just doing good. Glad to have this episode really kick off and get this journey going.
Yeah, it's been a while. I'm really excited about this because, as individuals, we were on this journey, but we actually had a conversation and we realized we're on the same type of journey together, obviously separately, and we decided to actually work as a team here. I actually really want to ask you, Jay, how did your journey start here?
Yeah, man. For me, it's very interesting that you say that because my journey started honestly with my students. Everybody who don't know, I'm a teacher as well, and so a lot of times I deal with kids who deal with a lot of trauma, who deal with a lot of emotional baggage, and just self-confidence issues and things like that. And so it started with just having those conversations with them, and then realizing myself, like, man, there's a lot of things that I haven't unpacked in my own life. So it was a slow crawl of really starting to realize things about me. And then the last 6 months, I want to say, is when I took a deep dive into everything and really started to process and break down just kind of, my reactions, the way I communicate sometimes, and just everything. Just really dive into my own mental health and just my inner voice and just a lot of everything, man. Just where did that come from? Where do these thoughts come from? Where do these ideas come from? As well as just why do I react in certain ways for certain things? And I had to go back, find the root. And so I just went into this deep dive of it, and then it kind of pushed me and moved me towards different type of healings and just understanding the different routes people can take. So that's kind of what started me on this path, man. So let me ask you the same question. What got you on this path?
Actually watching someone else grow, I would say. My friend Glessy, she was on her own spiritual path and healing herself. And I kind of realized that I have a lot of things wrong with me that I need to work on in my inner self, and a lot of barriers, so I wanted to take that same type of path. So I took a couple of classes that she was taking or doing things that she was doing. And I actually have, taken a different route here also. I'm doing a lot of things that she's doing, but I'm also doing a lot of things myself for myself, which is crazy that we actually ended up having that conversation where me and you talked about healing, because it's really not talked about in our community at all.
Not at all.
Right? There's always this stigma about, there must be something crazy wrong with you, right? You have some kind of addiction or something, right? When we talk about healing or even therapy, which I'm looking more into now. And I think this is really why this podcast is going to be super strong for anyone that's listening. It's because we're going to build a community here of people that are healing together individually.
Absolutely, man. And I think you hit something that was very, very important. We're talking about just the narrative in our community and how we kind of grew up, and where we talked in that conversation. Neither one of us knew we were both on this path of healing, and it just kind of came up organically. So I think it's crazy because, as Black men and men in general, we're not supposed to talk about what's going on in our lives. We're not supposed to talk about, if there's things that we're struggling with. We're supposed to just hold everything in and just be strong and just be the man, And so I like the fact that when we had this conversation, you and I are both on like, yo, that's crazy. That's dope. That's cool that you're doing the same thing. Let's talk about it. And we had a conversation. And it was very, very beneficial, I think, for both of us. And I think what you're saying with building a community where this is the norm, instead of us holding everything in, we want to build a community where this is the norm. Let's talk about what we're going through. Let's discuss these issues as a group, and let's work together. There's strategies that we may know or somebody else may know that can help us all.
Yeah, we're nowhere near experts at this.
Absolutely not.
We're all on this journey together. So, absolutely. What are some of the things that you're doing currently to, continue your journey?
A lot of it is, for me, beginning right now is meditating and just really using some time and some space to clear my thoughts, and to just kind of dive deeper within me. Another thing that I'm doing really, I said this to everybody, I think is very beneficial for people, is yoga. I really
Mm.
love yoga. It's another way of keeping me centered and grounded, and keeping my really focused on my body and within. There's a lot of focusing on you, especially when you're doing poses and things. But also just doing a lot of reading. A lot of reading in terms of just learning about how the brain works in psychology, and understanding um, just the trauma, like the trauma induced reactions, and how that works, and what does that do to you, and the generational trauma that carries on from person to person. You know,
Ooh, yeah.
so it's a lot of that. Um, I definitely want to start jumping into some of these other aspects of healing as well, because there's so many great aspects of things I know plenty of people do. You in particular, man, that talks about your healing, because I think you have some good stuff and some cool things going on over there.
Yeah, I'm definitely following a more untraditional route, I would say, for healing, right? Not the things that most people think about. I am looking into therapy, right? Which is another conversation altogether,
Mm-hmm.
which we'll have. But a lot of stuff that I've been working on is like my inner spirit, not in the traditional route as like going to church, right? For our community specifically, especially during these COVID times, I feel like it's been really hard, right? Because our normal quote unquote therapy is going to church
Mm-hmm.
or going to the barbershop. Even you don't even realize
Yes.
going to the
Yes.
barbershop and talking barbershop talk is our form of therapy in our community. Going to the hair salon for the females. um, but really, like, for me, it's been like collecting crystals and talking to my crystal community. It's all people in that community that are really uplifting and very nice to your spirit, right? They're all trying to bring you up. It's just finding those right communities. And with COVID, we lost some of our communities, like the hairdressers and things, and the churches. And that's really where I see people fighting for that. But that's another topic as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, for my journey, it's been crystals, it's been my plants. I'm getting into Reiki, so there's a lot of other inner spirit stuff, which was kind of funny when I sat down with Reiki for the first time with Glessy. She actually started talking about some stuff, like, because it's a lot of energy movements, right?
Yeah.
So she was telling me where my energy was actually like blocked. And it relates to past trauma, and it's
Absolutely.
stuff that we don't talk about. And we were talking the other day, and it was about like, if stuff happens to you, parts of your body will just shut down, and you don't even feel it, right? Your energy flow just doesn't go there anymore, or it's just blocked from there. So going through those routes and seeing where my energy is blocked, and seeing how I can fix that, and really do a deep dive for myself on myself, has been very therapeutic for me. But I'm also going to go to therapy, right? Because there's a lot of stuff that I need to talk out as well. Because it's not just realizing that you have a problem; it's taking those next steps to fix that, whatever that is.
Yeah. It's great that you say you're gonna go to therapy, because I commend everyone who takes that leap and that plunge to go speak to someone, especially for therapy, because like you said, there's a stigma behind, if I go to therapy, like something's definitely wrong with me, I'm crazy or something, But sometimes we just
Mm-hmm.
need people who are not within our circle to kind of help us talk through some of the things we've been through, some of those past traumas, past relationships, just past experiences. And I think that's a beautiful thing, especially for men, to go do, because like you and I talked before, man, that was not something that we talked about as, like, father to son. That was not passed down
Mm-hmm.
from our the men in our lives, where they, you talked about your feelings. Everything was swept underneath the rug. And I think that's kind of why we're at where we're at now, with a lot of things that's going on, is because we haven't had the ability to grow and develop that. That's a communication
Mm-hmm.
skill. Like, that's a skill. Uh,
Yeah, that is a muscle.
and people look at it the wrong way, in terms of like, oh, that's emotional, or that's what females do. And it's like, nah, man, that's what humans do. Humans have emotions, and we
Mm-hmm.
have to tap into our emotions and understand, what makes us tick. Like, find our triggers, find the things that we need to do to make ourselves feel better, just in general, about ourselves, about the world, about experiences and our relationships. And I think that's something that, when we were younger, it just wasn't there. And I'm glad that there's so many more representation in therapy now, where you see more men and men of color who are actually becoming more therapists. Because I also think that's a reason why I think a lot of times when we were younger, people thought of like, oh, that's not for me. We'll just
Yeah.
go to church. But that's one aspect. There's a lot more you can do to kind of help your psyche and just kind of help you build.
Yeah, I think there's a lot. When we're unraveling therapy, I think there's a lot, right? There's, especially in my house, there was like the statement, whatever happens in the house stays in the house, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's common in our community, right? Whatever happens in this house, like you don't go tell other people. This is our business. We'll handle it internally.
And then we don't really handle it.
And then we don't, yeah, we just sweep it under the rug, right? so there's that aspect completely for therapy. Like you're either crazy, right, or you just telling our business out in the streets, which is like detrimental to your mental health, really, because you have to go. And I feel like it's, for me, the reason why I'm searching for a therapist is because I feel like it's good to have someone that's outside of my relationships, that doesn't have a stake in the game, to just like, hear me out or give me good, not necessarily exactly how to deal with this, but the right steps to figure that stuff out myself.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Because you're right. Like a lot of people, if they have a stake in the game, like you say, they would try to sway you one way or the other. It's good to just have that impartial voice or just that impartial ear, really, because we really want somebody just to listen. Because a lot of times people, when you talk to friends and family, they're not really listening. They can hear you, but they're not listening because they're ready just to respond. They're waiting to respond to whatever you just said. And finding that outside voice, they're actually going to listen and actively listen to all the things you're saying and kind of help you navigate through these situations and scenarios and unpack that trauma. Man, one thing that I was thinking about, man, and it's helped me with this because I've been reading this. I got this chakra book. And I've been reading about chakras for a while, a little bit. Is Reiki kind of like dealing with your chakras and your energy as well?
Yes.
Yeah. That's
why I got you on, man.
Yeah. Shout out to James, man. He got me a session with the Reiki, our guru Glessy, so I can get myself, see what's going on with my energy levels. But yeah, I have a few friends who are really into the chakras and really into crystals like yourself. And it's been really helping them a lot the last few years, not just like months, like last few years. And so it's really kind of gravitated me towards looking into this too, because I'm one of those open-minded people. I do a lot of looking at different religions and practices and, trying to take a more of a holistic approach on life in general. And so I think like looking into all these things can definitely add more tools to my belt in terms of dealing with my own mental health. So yeah, man. Yeah. I'm excited about the Reiki. Let's get it popping.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have her in episode 2, but
oh, definitely.
But really, like that's kind of the approach that I'm taking, like holistically, right? I need to work on obviously my body as well, my physical being, my mental being, my spiritual being, because all of that, encompasses me, right? I'm just not one thing. So when we talk about the road to healing, we're talking about everything, right? Definitely. We're going in deep on everything because all of it's important. It's a holistic approach. Because I know plenty of people out there that are physically fit, jacked, but just aren't there mentally.
Absolutely, right? Yes.
And the opposite too, right? We know people that are just not there health-wise, physically, but we know people that are there spiritually. God will provide, right? But we also have to take care of ourselves. So it's all these things combined. I'm glad we're doing this. I'm glad you signed on to do this with me. But the next step, really, that I want to talk about really is how you started. Like, when did you realize you needed to take a deeper dive into who you are and how to heal yourself spiritually and holistically?
It's great you asked that because I feel like I've always kind of had this understanding of myself until everything like crashed down. So in 2008, that was probably like the hardest year for me in terms of my life. I was going to school, I was working, all these things were going good, and then everything went away in the last recession. Budget cuts, so I lost my job, right? School, there was some kind of mix up with school where now they put a hold on my registration and I couldn't get classes, so now I'm out of school. At the time I was living with my parents, and then things happened with me and my dad, and now I'm not in the house with my parents. So I had nowhere to go. I was living out of my best friend's mom's garage, basically. And it was like one of those low moments, man, where you're just trying to figure it out. You're trying to figure out how you get your next meal. You're trying to figure out what do you do for the day? How to be productive? I'm putting all these applications. Nobody's, because of the recession, nobody's hiring. It was crazy. And being at that lowest moment, there comes a time where you tell yourself like, yo, I'm never getting back to this. Mentally, physically, and spiritually. Like, that was a real hard time. And I had messed up a lot of relationships during that time as well, because of where my mental state was at. I was so depressed and so down. I was just affecting all these relationships very negatively, right? And I was pushing people away from me. I was just going into this shell. It wasn't even like myself anymore. Like, people know me as being bubbly, having fun, goofy guy. I was the total opposite. I was just grumpy. I was mad. I was angry. I was just bad, in a bad place. And I think that's where it kind of started right after I got out of that, because I just got lucky. It got me on the path where I'm at now with being a teacher. One of my ex-coaches, we're going everywhere trying to find jobs, me and my best friend. And so we ended up going to our old school district, and just happened luck, faith, whatever you want to call it, fate, just happened to be there that day. We run into our ex-coach. He's in a position of power where he can kind of, help us out and find a job. And after that, man, he put me on this path. And I realized during this time, right after getting a job and getting everything back on track, getting back in school, just I kind of added to this, this negative state. I dwelled in it. And I had to figure out this is not going to happen anymore. And so slowly but surely, you don't really dive into it at that time because it's so new. But I slowly but surely started to just rewire certain things, understand certain things. And then really just when I got married, quite honestly, fast forward when I got married, just my communication. I realized with my communication, for me, I don't like to argue, right? I don't like to argue. I don't like to fuss. Luckily, and I'm blessed, I have a wife who doesn't like to do the same thing. But I realized for me, there was a lot of things that I learned wrong about communication growing up, from a man's perspective. And so I had to dive back and just trying to figure these things all out. So it's really just trying to understand, okay, when I'm trying to have my voice heard and I'm just responding sometimes to people, not just my relationship, in general, I'm just responding to people. Am I really listening? And people tell you all the time, they'll tell me I'm a great listener. And okay, cool. But there's sometimes where I just go into look, we're in debate mode, so let's debate.
Yeah, this is your point now. This is my rebuttal.
Yeah, I go into this debate mode sometimes with certain things, and I lose that. And I'm like, why? Where'd that come from? Right? It's like a switch that goes on. Where did that come from? You have to understand and break that down. And just understanding in my household how, we had a suppressed voice. It's like a lot of our households, kids didn't have a voice. You didn't have a say. There wasn't a conversation with you. And that's where that comes from. Understanding that's where that comes from, because, you do as I say, and that's it. And if I tell you to do it, you do it. Well,
and how many of us grew up like that, right? I just had a conversation with another friend that said the same exact thing. He had a suppressed voice at home.
Yeah.
Right. And then, my fiance, she said the same thing. If you speak up in her culture, it's considered disrespectful.
Yeah.
Right. So if you speak up for yourself, or you speak even your thoughts, it's considered disrespectful. So yeah, that suppressed voice, definitely it'll linger. Right. And sometimes that turns into, us talking too much later on, because we just I don't get to talk at home, so you're going to hear my point.
You overcompensate.
Right. You definitely.
Yeah. And
definitely.
So now it's because you don't get that voice at home, you overcompensate with everyone else in every other situation, and you try to dominate that conversation or dominate the communication, and because you want to feel heard. That's what it's really coming from. You want to feel heard. And it's just it's crazy, man, because even that, like, I had to change a lot of those things up, like just talking to people and understanding, like, hey, listen to what they're saying before you're ready to respond. You know what I mean? Understanding just kind of how all those situations work from our past, from our childhood, how it kind of affected us as adults, and then not really dealing with it as a kid, not really dealing with it in our 20s, and then kind of understanding it now for a lot of people in their late 20s, early 30s. They're like, yo, this is something we need to address. Like, I'm 30-some years old. I shouldn't have these kind of issues. Where you almost get like upset for certain things out of nowhere for no reason. I'm a Cancer, and I say that because I tell this to people all the time. Cancers, man, we're very moody. So like, there's times where my mood just flips, and I'm like in my head, in my thoughts, and I'm just stewing and not really stewing about anything important, but just stewing or just meddling with just understanding, like, man, I need to do this, I need to do that, and like really trying to just go into my head. And sometimes that can put you in a dark space. So you have to know how to navigate through those things and come out of it. And it's also beneficial for me because, I have kids. So I want to make sure my kids don't experience the same thing. I want them to be able to feel like they have a voice.
You got to break the cycle.
Yeah, definitely break the cycle, man, because they need to have a voice. They need to understand that, it's okay to speak up for yourself and know how to do it, productively, because there's a lot of times where, I would speak up, not in my household, but like in other settings, and it was not productive. It came off as the angry black man. And even that, like the angry black man, I think sometimes people don't understand where that comes from. So even understanding how to navigate through life with those pressures, being able to watch what you say and how you say things, because you may come off as an angry black man. So it was a lot of times of just
there's a lot of stigma that we have to work through as adults. A lot of trauma we have to work through as adults that was built to protect us, right? "Quote unquote," to protect us. But in some points, we're holding us back, like
Absolutely.
being able to speak up for ourselves, because we don't want to come off as the angry black man, right? Or before we leave the house, to be careful of, because you're a black man, in my case in Alameda, which is, primarily Caucasian and Asian, you're a black man in Alameda, don't forget. Like, how am I going to forget? Like, I don't understand what that means.
Yeah.
But really, my parents are saying, like, be safe,
Mm-hmm.
like, it just didn't come off like that, right? So there's a lot of stuff. And I just kind of chuckled in the back when you were talking about your story, because you really don't realize how many people are on the same kind of journey as you. Because around that same time, 2007, 2008, I would say 2007, I graduated high school. So 2008, 2009, I also left my house, right? I stayed in my best friend's car for like a month. And then I went and moved into my best friend's girlfriend's garage, right? So we're both living in other people's garages at a time.
That's crazy.
Right? And then our journey brought us to, work as security in the Bay Area, and you're from LA. So, our journey brought us together there. And it wasn't until 5 or 6 later where we're reconnecting to do this part.
It's crazy, right? It's crazy how like things work. And just like, we never talked about that. I never knew you had this same like situation where we were both living, not outside the house. I was living in my car for like a good couple of weeks before my best friend mom told me, move into the back. So yeah, it's crazy, man. And you're right. Like, you never know who's going through the same exact thing you're going through. And because we're taught not to talk, we can't help each other. Like, healing to me, it goes back to, it takes a village, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And that village mentality we used to have in our cultures. And, I think that's part of what's missing. We had healers, like, that was their title.
Yeah,
that was their title. We had healers. And it's like, now that we're so far removed, where are the healers? And I think this is going to be great for a lot of people, because it's going to start that journey for themselves. And they're going to be able to look at themselves and be like, you know what, you're right. I do need to address some of this past trauma and some of these things I'm going through, so I can heal, so I can be my best self. And I think that's usually what's missing when healing. Healing is only developing you to grow and become your true and most potential self.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I used this reference last time we talked, but we all kind of, especially me, before I took this healing journey, I was like, I'm fine. I am the way I am.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, that's just the way I communicate. Like, I'm not gonna change, and that's just so detrimental to my future relationships. My future relationships, whether it be with my partner, my kids, friendships, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm surrounded by relationships. Maybe my relationship with a boss, it's just very detrimental. So when I started seeing myself more as like, let's think like the iPhone, right? A new iPhone comes out pretty much every season.
Yeah.
And it's not because the last phone was broken. It's just because it can become better. And that's the same with us. We can just become better. We can become better versions of ourselves, whether it's the next season, the next year, like just continuing the journey to become a better version of yourself. And I think that's the perfect place to stop right here and just ask you, like, what are your final thoughts when it comes to healing? Like, what do you think someone that's just coming into this should think about, or what's the first steps that they should take?
Honestly, I believe your first steps you should take is know your triggers. Like, what are the things that bother you? What are the things that frustrate you? What are the things that cause you to let that negative voice kind of sneak in? What are you not secure about? What are your insecurities? Because usually that's where your trauma and stuff starts. With your insecurities. Mm-hmm. So just know your triggers. Write them down. If you don't know, just start writing stuff down, and then work backwards. So now I know this bothers me. Now, why does this bother me? Get to the root of the problem. Where can I go back to where this started? Where did this start? Where did it come from? And that's kind of how kind of what I did. So I think that was good benefits for me, but also just get in tune with yourself. We posted this on our Instagram. Love yourself, because there's a lot of people walking around to this day who will post on social media and put up this mask for their friends, but they truly don't love themselves. And I think in this world where we're moving, we have to truly love ourselves first. Know yourself and love yourself. And that's just where you should start. Knowing you, what makes you tick, what bothers you, what makes you happy, and just understand those little check boxes about you as an individual, because those are the things that are going to help you propel you to go forward.
Yeah, I love that. And, I would just say the journey is just starting, right? No matter how we're starting a journey, not everything is going to be for everyone. Therapy is not for everyone. Crystals aren't for everyone, but do find your thing, right? Find the thing that helps you. It could be journaling, like Jay said, just write things down. When something bothers you, write it down. And then you can go back later when you're in a different state and really look back and say, like, why did that bother me? Or, go see a therapist or get into a community, whatever it is. Find people around you, whether it's your family, your friends, or someone outside that you can talk to. It really just start the journey, man. Just start the journey. So that's it. That was episode 1.
Yes,
I really enjoyed starting this conversation. I can't wait to have more guests on, talk to them, get more perspective on how to heal, how to start the journey. How do you feel, Jay? Episode 1 in the books.
Episode 1, man, like you said, man, I think this is a great start. I guess this is a great way to begin this journey for all of us. And I'm excited for what can come out of this. I feel like there's a lot of healing that's going to come from this, from ourselves, and from other people as well who just listen. People we might not even know. They might not even say one word to us, but they can gain perspective and gain some a way to heal themselves. So I'm really excited about that, man. Helping the community is the one thing you and I both love, and I love it. This is going to be great.
Yes, sir. Thank you all for listening to the Highway to Healing podcast. We'll come back with more great stuff. Until then, you can connect with us on Instagram, The Highway to Healing. And we'll hope to hear from you guys soon. And we're about to put out so much great content. Just
be ready
for it.
Be ready.